Let's call this meeting to order. Welcome, everybody. If you could all stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Citizen statements and petitions. Does anybody have anything they'd like to bring in front of the board? All right, do we have any correspondence? I don't believe I have anything.
Laura says there's no audio.
Maybe the other,
Oh, hang on. Oh, no, there are.
turn the other one on.
Maybe I pressed the button.
Just turn your speakers on for a second. You want it?
Not in it yet. Just getting to the agenda. Now she can.
Now she get in?
All right, well, we have 6:30 poll petition, public hearing for a poll on Northbridge Road. So I move to open the public hearing for the National Grid poll petition for Northbridge Road in Mendon. Is there a second? Second. All right, roll call vote, Morale, aye.
You are.
Got it, aye.
Who goes aye?
Aye.
Pretty good. Turn your volume down. There we go. All right.
Sorry.
Right, in conformity with the requirements of Mass General Law 166, Chapter 22, the Mendon Select Board hereby gives notice that we'll hold a public hearing on February 1st, 2023 at 6:30 PM, which is now in the Town Hall Upper Meeting Room, 20 Main Street, Mendon, Massachusetts. Electric Company, DBA National Grid requests permission to locate poles, wires, and fixtures, including the necessary sustaining and protecting fixtures along and across the following public way: Northbridge Street, install 1 SO poles on Northbridge Road, National Grid to install a 35-foot support pole and anchor, number 3884, across from P38 due to leaning and a low secondary cable to 73 Northbridge Road. All interested parties will be given an opportunity to be heard. Anybody want to be heard about this public hearing? About this pole placement? All right, then I'm going to move to close the public hearing for the poll petition on North.
Second.
All right, roll call vote. Morale, aye.
You are.
Got it, aye.
Who goes aye?
All right. You want to read this
I
motion?
moved on to Massachusetts Electric Company, DBA National Grid. Request permission to locate poles, wires, and fixtures, including necessary sustaining and protecting fixtures along and across the following public way: Northbridge Street. Install 1 SO poles on Northbridge Road. National Grid to install a new 35-foot support pole and anchor, number 38-84, on P38 due to leaning on a low secondary cable to 73 Northbridge Road.
Second. Any discussion? All those in favor, Morale, aye.
You are.
Got it, aye.
Who goes aye?
All right. And we're,
Thanks for coming. Thanks. Well, welcome to stay over here.
Mhm.
so we have the public, the land use at 6:40, right?
Yes. So Anne says she's not going to be here. I don't think she's on the call, but she says she's reachable by phone if needed, and
She asked me
then
to.
sent me some information also.
did
Oh,
you?
so, well, I'm from the Land Use Committee and you're
Okay.
from
CPC,
CPA.
yeah.
Okay, all right, so
Okay, we got.
she's got her,
We can do 7.
Well, that's what I'm looking.
covered her bases, I guess.
Yeah, let's talk about the number 7 of the motions, which is to appoint the new clerk.
So as you know, we had a vacancy in the clerk position because the clerk was promoted to the assistant treasurer collector position. So we had a number of applicants for the clerk's role, and Shelley and Jody interviewed a couple of candidates, and overwhelmingly both picked this person, Patricia Gauthier, who previously works in the Blackstone Millville School District and has a bunch of experience, sort of not directly related to municipal finance, but within the administration of a similar structure. So she has a degree and she is open to part-time work in the finance office. So
Anybody have any questions? Someone willing to make a motion to appoint her? Go ahead.
I move to appoint Patricia Gautier to the position of finance clerk at a pay rate of $22.24 per hour for up to 18 hours per week.
Second.
Motion been made and seconded. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All right. Great. Let's talk about number 8. We have a couple of minutes. If you remember, at our last meeting, we talked about 3 surplus vehicles. We have a 93 Ford F-150, a 93 International 200 SER truck, and then we have this truck ambulance. So I did some checking. We can use insurance auto auctions. They give us 2 choices. They'll either if I send them pictures and the titles, they'll give us an offer outright and just come pick them up and take them away. Or what they'll do is they'll put them to auction. They put them on a nationwide video auction, and people bid on it, and they'll give it to the highest bidder. Now, what I'm going to suggest we do is we have them give us a price for the first 2, the Ford F-150 and the International, just because that's a pretty straightforward situation. This truck, we'll talk about that in a second. That's not so straightforward. The issue is if we put it to auction, we would have to arrange getting the vehicles to their yard in Taunton. But what I'm going to try to do is have them buy the first 2 out. My suggestion is that we vote to have them buy the first 2 outright, and then they'll transport them. And while they're coming to get them, they'll take that ambulance as well. And then anybody can bid on it that wants to bid on it. That's my thought. Now, the other wrinkle to this is this vehicle says right on the tag, the truck, that it belongs to the U.S. government. So Alan and I have been trying to sort it out, and I've been bounced from Homeland Security to a couple different places. And the best I can figure out, this 1968 Jeep truck was given to the town in the 1970s to the fire department, probably to use it as a rescue vehicle, as an ambulance, because we didn't have one in the 70s. And it never got used, and it's just sat around now. So today I did talk to somebody for the state of Massachusetts about surplus equipment. He sent an email to somebody in the federal government or in the I guess the fire service in Massachusetts, because he thinks that that's probably where it originated from. So the plan is to get it all cleared, and then have somebody give us a document that says, yeah, this belongs to the town of Mendon now. Once it does, then we can decide as a board what we want to do with it. So, I mean, I would say that it's, we can take a vote. You can make a motion for us to either auction them off or sell them, or have insurance auto auction help us dispose of them. Or we can just table it, which would be my suggestion, that we just table it for now and let me find out.
Clarify on the third vehicle.
Exactly. And I'll get some more information, because the other 2, I didn't send them anything yet, but I'm going to send them on the other 2 unless anybody has a different idea about going a different way. But this seems to be the fairest way to get the best price.
The other thing is, I don't think we can just sell it to them outright, because we'd have to put all 3 of them, well, say it would take the ambulance
Yep.
out of the equation. The 2, we would have to put it out for anybody to bid on them, to buy them.
Do we, well, you know what, and maybe you know that better than I do. I didn't read the bylaw that closely.
Well, yeah, through the regular procurement process, to sell surplus stuff, there's, like we stick it on, I don't know, does it go on the central register?
Well, the vehicles are a little bit different.
Are they?
So they have, I mean, that's what I said last time we were in here, which is if it was below a certain value, but even declaring it surplus doesn't apply to vehicles specifically.
Okay,
So I do think that there is a method in which, sort of like what he's saying, I remember a database because we looked at it for a vehicle before.
yeah,
In which you basically list them there and that basically will qualify because it's open to multiple.
just open to everybody to look at
Yes.
it.
So I think, I mean, Karis is here, she probably knows best, but
Yep.
we can, once we have some, get a little more information. I was thinking, if you're guessing, I mean, I think I have meeting minutes downstairs from the 70s. If
Yeah,
we
there's a book.
really have an idea of when it was acquired, I might be able to at least get some paper vote documentation.
Well, and that's great from that perspective, but what it comes down to is the placard on it says, it belongs to the United States. So it's up to them, so even if we need a document that transfers ownership. And, at one point I was said, we'll call the registry. There's, the vehicle identification number is 5 digits long. It's a serial number. There's no way, it's never been registered. It's not, we don't have a title. So what we really need to do is get the federal government to find it. And if not, somebody with authority needs to say, you know what? Yeah, here's a document. This belongs to the town of Mendon. Once we have that, then we could put it on insurance auto auction or wherever and auction them off. And that sounds like the best based on what Lonnie's saying. We can't have them buy it outright, but just tell them, okay, I want you to bid on all 3 of them. And now that, and I'm not even certain that we need to get them at the yard right away. I mean, we could actually have them bid them on us, and then whoever the owners are, the people who win the bid would have to, come pick them up. So unless anybody has any other questions, I'm going to continue to march on that and come back to the board.
Sounds good to me.
All right. All right, let's go back now to our hearing. And this is the land use one. Right? All right. So I move to open the land use 5-year public hearing, 5-year plan public hearing. Do I have a second?
Second,
All right, all those in favor, roll call vote, Morale, aye.
Got it, eh?
Brugos, aye.
Mendon Select Board, Land Use Committee, and Community Preservation Committee hereby give notice that there will be a public hearing now, February 1st at 6:40 at the Mendon Town Hall, 20 Main Street, Mendon, and remotely. Details for access to the meeting can be found at www.mendonma.gov/selectboard to receive comments on the 5-year land use program and to hear suggestions for Community Preservation Act funded projects. For questions, email the community preservation at mendonma.gov. Sorry about that. Thought I,
My
We have a
reminder,
meeting.
it's me.
It's all of us.
Sorry.
okay. So do we have so Ann's not on here. Do we have anybody that can talk about this?
She has coverage.
What's that? Okay,
So in the packet, there's the
yeah, the goal 5-year.
5-year goals. I also have the annual report from the land use committee here.
Okay.
I don't know.
Lonnie, could you possibly open it up and bring it up share it on the screen? So she's got it numbered as number 5 on the.
I get it.
right. So do you want to walk through it, Elena?
Should I read it?
Sure.
Okay. So 5-year land use program, land use committee. Goal, I'll say goal once. To protect critical parcels of land for conservation and passive recreation. To provide active recreation areas to meet the needs of Mendon's growing population. To access funding and land protection strategies to protect or purchase land for open space or recreation. To maintain recreational and passive recreation properties the town owns. To protect the town's water resources, wetlands, ponds, aquifers, etc. To provide support to farmers who want to keep their land in agriculture and maintain productive farms. To help guide business and residential development to shape Mendon's growth, avoiding haphazard development. To provide cemetery space to meet future needs. To assist in the acquisition of land for the town of Mendon's needs. To work towards the goal of 10% affordable housing units for the town of Mendon. Full copies of the Mendon Open Space and Recreation Plan 2013 to 2020 can be seen on the town website, and copies can be found at the Mendon Town Hall in the town clerk's office.
All right, does anybody have any questions about the goals or the 5-year land use program? Is there anybody with their hand up remotely? All right, hearing no questions and hearing the goals, do we have a motion to close the public hearing?
So move.
Just real quick though, just maybe open it up for any questions on the CPC side, because I think it's a dual meeting. I think she, in the motion, it mentioned that we're open to questions for the community preservation side, if anyone has any.
Sure.
And hearing none.
Right,
So moved.
so do we have a second? So we have a motion been made, is it seconded?
Second.
All right. All those in favor to close the hearing, roll call vote, Morale, aye.
Tenio, aye.
Got it, aye.
Brugos, aye.
All right,
I move to approve the land use 5-year plan as presented.
Second.
all right. Is there any other discussion, any other questions for anybody? I just want to make sure we're giving everybody a chance on either side. No hands are raised, so all those in favor?
Tenio,
Aye.
aye.
Got it, aye.
Brugos, aye.
All right, thank you very much. And now we are at 6:50. So we're at the third public hearing. And this, I move to open the chapter 61A public hearing for North Ave.
Second.
A roll call vote, Morale, aye.
Tenio, aye.
Got it, aye.
Brugos, aye.
Okay. And public hearing notice, the Mendon Select Board hereby gives notice that it will hold a public hearing February 1st, 2023 at 6:50, which is now, in the Town Hall Upper Meeting Room, 20 Main Street, Mendon, Massachusetts, to consider whether or not to exercise the town's right of first refusal under Mass General Law, Chapter 61, Section 14, to acquire from James R. Vandersloot and Sherry Ezel Vandersloot a portion of land shown as parcel 5-189-101-0 on North Ave. All interested parties will be given an opportunity to be heard. And just to refresh everybody's memory, we discussed this at a previous meeting, and what had happened was this was an agreement between these landowners and their neighbors to sell a slice of land that was between the two from one to the other. And the Land Use Committee had recommended that we deny the first right of refusal or pass on it to allow this to complete the sale. And I was told if we didn't do anything, that it would just naturally pass to, we'd give up our first right of refusal within, I think, 120 days. But it was better for us to do this, so it allowed the process to finish that much sooner. And I guess I would ask council, we spoke about this, if you can just weigh in on this and correct me or fill in any blanks that I left out.
Sure. Good evening, everyone. You're correct, Mr. Chair. The right of first refusal, once presented to the town, has 120 days to either either let it go by or actually issue a notice of non-exercise or a notice of exercise, depending on what you wish to do. And either a notice of non-exercise or a notice of exercise is a straightforward letter that has to be recorded. So it gives in the registry of deeds, so it gives notice so that then the transaction could proceed if you choose to non-exercise your right of first refusal. Everything is in order in terms of the application. There's some very specific requirements in the statute. So it's really a decision for you all at this point. If you want to exercise your right of first refusal, then you'd have to match the price, and you would have 90 days to put together a purchase and sale agreement and purchase the property, or to not exercise the right of first refusal and let the transaction between the two private parties go through.
Okay, is there anybody with their hand up or anybody want to be heard during this public hearing? All right, hearing none, I move to close the public hearing to exercise the town's right of first refusal under Mass General Law, Chapter 61, Section 14 for parcel 5-189-101-0 North Avenue.
Second,
All right, roll call vote. All those in favor, Morale, aye.
Tenio, aye.
Goddard, aye.
Brugos, aye.
All right, so the hearing is closed.
I
And
move to not exercise the option to purchase a portion of land in parcel 5-189-101-0 on North Ave under section 14, chapter 61A.
And there was also the motion was amended
Oh, right.
based on council suggestion that us says, do you have that piece of it or?
Oh, yeah, so you know what? I'm in the wrong motions. All right.
Yeah.
I'll redo that. I move to not exercise the option to purchase a portion of land in parcel 5-189-101-0 on North Ave under section 14 of chapter 61A and authorize the chair to sign the notice of non-exercise on behalf of the board.
Second.
All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 All right, thank you very much. So what's
Great,
that?
I will put together the notice for you, Mr. Chair, and we can get that back to council.
All right. Now
Thank you
we're,
all. Good night.
sure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. So now we've taken care of 7 and 8, so now we're on to number 9, which is consider planning request for A&R approval dash at 36 Milford Street, pro storage. Hi, Jack.
Mr. Chair, if I can speak to that,
Please do, sir.
how's everyone? As you know, the town meeting approved, hold on, my dog doesn't like you guys. Hold on. Town meeting approved the potential sale of the property on Milford Street to Pro Storage. And we entered in the purchase and sale, and we are now I've been working over the last few months on the prospect of them coming in front of the planning board for site plan approval, which would be the last step prior to a building permit. One of the actions we need them to eventually take to close out the purchase and sale and bring it to you for an actual sale is to divide the parcels into 3 lots. And I think right on the screen, you can see to the lower left, which would be the southwestern corner, that's where the storage facility will go. Then to the right, the blue, the 6.6 acres is property they're technically buying, but they're going to give back to the town for open space. And then the rest is the remaining property, which is primarily the, I think it's an Eversource right away and the solar panels. And so in order for them to divide this or propose dividing these properties up, they need, because they don't own the property, they need your approval to apply for it. It's a technicality, but it's one more step to getting closer to this. I should add one other thing is that they plan on coming in front of the planning board on Monday to start the process. Probably the hearings will be in March.
So are you looking for a motion for us to give them permission to subdivide the land?
Correct. You'll still own it. And if it falls through the sale, then we can always revert back if we have to.
So the motion isn't to give them permission, the motion is to allow subdivision of the land.
I think it's giving them permission to apply for it.
Well.
Council's on here, I'll refer to her, but I think.
I mean, the motion is to authorize the planning department or the planning board to move forward with the A&R. Because we own the land, we have to give them the okay to go ahead and do this process.
Right.
Whereas if it was, say, I own the land, I would just tell myself.
Well, that's what I'm saying. So it's not really to give the people who want to buy it permission, is to give the planning board.
Giving
permission.
ourselves permission. Yeah.
Right.
Right.
So I move to authorize the planning department to move forward with an A&R, approval not required, for 36 Milford Street, Pro Storage.
Second.
All right. Is there any other discussion or questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Jack.
Hopefully the next step is to come back to you guys for an actual sale of the property.
All right.
Bye now.
Aye. Aye.
Thanks, Jack.
All right, so number 10, we have two seasonal license renewals, one for the Mendon Driving Range and one for George's Surf and Turf.
I move to approve the seasonal license renewals for the Men in Driving Range, 37 Hastings Street, and George's Surf and Turf, 116 Uxbridge Road, pending the receipt of positive routing slips.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much. And now we're on to item 11, which is the continuing our fiscal 24 budget review.
I'm just wondering if you want to just go to 12 quickly in case there's anybody that's on just for this. It's only going to take a minute. I just wanted to.
Sure. Well, why don't we jump to number 12 so we can discuss this Town Hall alcove window project. Can you tell us what it is, Kim? And
Sure. So at town meeting, we had two separate articles approved. One was for a study to look at the rear entrance of the back entrance of the town hall, including the rear staircase and the elevator and the bathroom area, the alcove area. And then separately, an article was passed to look at the windows on the town hall and replacement of them. And so I had one architect that I was working with. And so I met with Historic last week and the architect to sort of see if we could combine one project sort of to get traction, and that looks positive. So I'm going to be coming back. The architect is going to revise their scope, and I'm going to bring the scope back with both projects combined, and then we can move forward with something to sign.
so just tell me again, which windows are we talking about?
All of the windows.
All the windows, upstairs and downstairs.
I think Kathy's on, but I think there's 41 or there's some outrageously high number of windows. And then essentially they would serve as our lead, and then they would subcontract the windows piece to firms that do that type of work, depending on what our budget turns out to be, our options around the windows. And concurrently, any changes that we do, the external portion of the building, including the doors, which are part of what we're talking about, all need to go to the state for approval anyway. So it makes more sense to have a historic firm working on the windows and the doors at the same
And
time.
this is all the doors or just that one in the back corner?
This one at the top has to be replaced no matter what, at the top of the ramp, and then the one in the back, sort of redesign of that to match the
The one
aesthetic.
at the back corner of the parking lot.
Right, right.
Kind of behind the elevator with that long treacherous stairway and.
Correct. And
Yeah.
so this study, right, the work actually will just give us concepts and designs and then pricing. I mean, the hard part obviously is
bringing them and then funding them. So we're, this isn't immediate. This is happening now, and then we'll have to come back for funding at town meeting at some point for the other parts of it. And depending on where we are financially, right, we can determine what we actually do moving forward.
Now, was there any requirement to get a bid for different architects to bid the work, or is that not until we're
Well,
ready to actually
It's,
do the work?
it's professional service work, so it's covered, but it's also well under the threshold. Our original scope was $10,000, so we're well within the range.
The windows was bigger than 10,000.
Well, we're just talking
Architect
about,
Scope.
right, all I'm asking about right now is, do we need to bid for the architect? But when we get to when we actually get a conceptual design, we're gonna have to go out to bid.
No, the CPC money for, and maybe Kathy can correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought we allocated like 40,000.
We did.
for the study.
We both allocated a lot. This is the very first step.
But the 40,000 wasn't for the full work. It was just for to engage somebody.
Correct.
And I think we approved either 50 or 25 for the alcove space. But I mean, these are phased approaches anyway, right?
No,
So-
I'm reacting to $10,000 when I know that the windows was.
Yeah, well, 10,000, I think, was for the
Original, right,
for the alcove part.
Right.
right, when he
Yeah,
first
not for
walked
not
through.
for the-
Right, so as we're combining two
Right,
projects,
to be more money.
what is it, what's
Yeah.
that new cost? And then
And do
is
we
there
need
any
to-
issue with commingling the funding and
Yeah.
the source of funding? Because the windows are very specific to historic and the engagement of an architect with that background.
I think both sources of funding were from CPC.
Even on the back alcove, because I didn't
Yes.
think that part of the building was,
That would make sense because the building is still a historical building.
But,
that's an add-on.
but
Yeah, I know,
but-
but
yeah, but
Yeah.
either way, so the first scope that I got for the first walkthrough was
Right.
basically just for design concepts.
Yeah.
I think you were here, said I needed to be quantified, right? I needed to be
Right.
monetized. So that's the other piece that we would now, and we really need workable numbers. So in addition to just so that first number that I got, which was actually like 7,500 and change, was just for some concepts.
Mhm.
This would be more elaborate, and now he's going to rework it to add the window piece into. So I'll know better what the pricing is once, he
I
revises
guess
the scope.
I just want to know what the cost is for this next step. I heard under 10 grand, but
originally in the 10 grand, but what is the estimate for the cost? And do we have any procurement issues? But you're saying no, because it's,
It's professional service anyway. Architect is professional service, but I don't know what the new scope is with the windows piece, but that's what he's revising now.
well, what's the cost going to be
For him to
do the
revise it.
revision?
To
Are you
revise-
saying
to
that's under-
revise the scope? Nothing.
Is it with,
Okay.
okay, all right, well, that,
I mean, he's just basically revising his proposal to include what he heard from Historic about the windows, right? And then,
okay, so he's revising his proposal to do this
Cost.
plan.
right, he's, right.
To do the full set of plans for
Right.
the alcove plus the.
Right.
Yeah, right. He's revising what
What it was gonna cost to do the alcove.
right, and it was, at that point, it was just some designs, not more elaborate than that. Like, what's the,
We need a set of plans. We're gonna.
right, it was just a swag at what it cost to come in and give us some ideas. That was about 7 grand, right? And then there's another phase, and then, so I don't know what the
We
new
don't-
revised amount would be, but
We don't
we'll
have to
find
know.
out soon
But
enough.
the limit being under a certain dollar amount doesn't apply because there's no procurement aspect
Right,
to it.
it's,
That's sort of
it's
the.
professional services. That
Right,
was my
that-
question.
Right.
It's kind of like, it's similar to employing town council.
Mhm.
That's,
Just out of curiosity, so, so it's changing the scope, but there's potentially still a way to separate it, that, some of the services are for the alcove and some are for the windows, that.
So
some to, like,
in
some
concept,
together.
I mean, in concept, because he doesn't actually do the window stuff, I think of it more of in a subcontracting way. So he would be managing that piece of it with, and he's going to do design work.
Right.
He's going to contact a couple of historic firms that do windows, like depending on the size of the project, and it's going to fall under this umbrella, right? And so then he would manage it. So if it was a construction project and you bring in subs, right, it's the same sort of thing. I think as it gets a little further down, we'd have a better idea, really. I think I honestly, like I said before, I have no idea cost-wise what we're even talking about. There's some complexities to it, particularly around what is possible with that elevator. Like I mean, some of his initial questions were, we're not replacing it. We're not we're living with this elevator, right? Because these are real scope questions. Like, we don't want to have him designing something that is totally unreasonable, right? So we'll know better, but in the meantime, he's revising the scope and we're meeting. It's basically my update. That's where we're at.
Okay. Anybody have any other questions?
You could ask Kat if Leonard's on too. I mean, I thought the meeting was positive and I thought.
Yeah, I would definitely say the meeting was positive, and I think he is, the gentleman that we're working with is very knowledgeable. He knows, where his threshold is, and he knows where to call in the professionals, especially with respect to the windows and the doors. So I think we all felt he was very knowledgeable and competent.
All right, thanks, Kathy. Any other questions or about this issue? All right, let's move on to the budget review, continue with the budget review.
Okay, let me just get to my screen.
Good evening, Ellen.
Good evening. How are you?
Thanks, Jack. Does the FinCom need to open their meeting?
Yeah, most likely.
All right, so Lonnie, I'm switching to me.
Sure, go ahead.
Just want to see.
Do we have quorum for the FinCom?
This is Nick. I'm here.
Jack Hodgins here.
Adam Griffin.
Okay, yeah, looks like we have quorum, so I guess we'll say we'll open the FinCom meeting at 7:08 p.m. on February 1st.
All right, why don't we start with, now is this document in the,
Yes. So all of the documents have been updated and are available in the Finance Committee folder, including a budget report, PDF in there that is actually from the system itself that matches the bottom line of spreadsheets that we're working off of. That's saved in there as well. So all of the data is in Springbrook now, both revenues and expenditures. So that's all good to go. And I'll let Ellen do her budgets first, and then I'll give you a general budget update so she doesn't have to.
not to be difficult, but looking at OneDrive, the town of Mendon.
Yep. Select board. Nope. Town of Mendon.
Yeah.
Would it be select board?
Right. So I don't have. Is that maybe not mapped?
Here, I'll just send you.
All right.
The link.
Finance Committee. It's coming right up for me, but I think we've been through this before. I just have to find. So I got to go to town of Mendon.
Yep, and then go to town hall. And then it's under.
All right, it's just, see, when I go to town of Mendon, the only thing that's mapped here is select board. So can I click on this and it? I don't want to. All right.
I'm just going to send you the link right now.
Okay, all right.
You can go through your email.
Right.
And then.
By 24 requests, department requests.
Yes, that's the main.
This thing.
We are on a tab, yellow tab, line 356 is where we're starting.
There we go. So we're starting with town clerk salaries and wages.
Yes. Yes, think the town clerk is the only other. As far as I know. Or just.
And it's a good replacement in that scenario, though. It's good looking Italian stuff there.
Are you guys talking? Because I can't, it keeps breaking up.
We're waiting for you.
I think somebody, well, I think somebody needs to mute that there's a lot of background. Is that her?
Yeah.
Oh, so she's at the,
Go,
okay.
go
Yeah,
ahead.
I'm at the curling club. Sorry, but Kim,
Right.
when Kim was talking, it was breaking up.
No problem.
Okay, so, really the only things besides the normal 2% plus stipends for my salary, the only increases in both of my budgets, are really, postage costs. As you guys probably know, the postage has gone up significantly, and for the town clerk's, budget, I needed to go up, 33%. To keep up with, and that's my best guess. I mean, I may have to come back at special town for more money, but we'll see how it goes with dog licensing and increased mailings for censuses, mailings for voter registrations. Now it's automatic voter registration, so we have to send out a letter every time somebody goes to the registry, basically. So basically, that's what I'm asking for. I'm not asking for any increases in any other things.
I guess in the companies we run too much, they the whole company wide thing.
I'm just looking at the budget and line 369, election registration expenses. I don't know, CLN sheet
Yep,
services.
contractual services.
Yeah, so that's dropped.
Yes.
Yes, because we only have one election. Well, it's a light election year, basically. We have just the presidential primary next March, which is the only election that's in this budget, and 2 town meetings.
Okay. And the computer services dropped for the same reason?
Yeah, it's all based on how many elections we have in the cycle.
Go ahead, Nick.
Thanks. Ellen, just because it's top of mind, I received my excise tax bills today. I'm not sure if those are sent by you.
No, they are not.
Oh, okay. Because I received 4 of them. And I'm just thinking, as our mailing costs have gone up, is there any way to bulk those so that I don't get 4 separate envelopes rather than just 4 bills in one envelope? That's all.
Yeah, I think it's based on the cars, but you could check with our finance director on that. And we are using a postage machine now, so we are saved. I know she is and I am. We are saving a little bit. But nevertheless, we've had 2 price increases just this fiscal that we didn't budget for.
Yeah, sorry.
If I can, I've asked this question. We've had this discussion before. And the excise bills are actually sent out by Kelly and Ryan, which is a company we contract with. And it's a set cost. And the way it was explained to me is, the postage is they have whatever the license is. In other words, it would not save us any money, but I would suggest, Nick, that you send the finance director an email again. Maybe that's changed now. But the last time we asked the question, that was the answer that we'd gotten, is that, that we have a contractor that does that. And
So based upon the way that they do it, I just happen to know, I worked there at one point. The bills come off of a printer, they're slammed onto a machine that then folds them, sticks them in an envelope. So it's a 1-for-1. There's not a manual process. And they would probably have to do some information to get it.
Yep. Okay, that answers the question. I just thought it was top of mind and I saw the increase in postage. That's all. Thanks.
I'd be curious to understand the contract then, because to make that happen, they must giving us a flat rate, of which the variable cost of postage built in, or they have a buffer to make it work on their side.
I think, because I asked that question before, and it has to do with the type of mailing permit they have. And
So we took the selling piece.
on the scale, what's that?
They're getting a reduced rate.
Exactly.
Yeah, I can speak to that on my end for my census. I also use a mailing service to mail out our census, and their cost is much cheaper than if I were to mail it out myself. And they give me an estimate that I prepay, and then once it's all mailed out, then I get the real cost, and you know, they take it off the contracted services too. So, you know, the actual cost does come out, but that went up this year too. They're dealing with the same postage increases we are.
All right, does anybody have any questions for the town clerk about either that budget or the elections?
We used to do that, that was what we used to do.
Ellen, the computer cost, that's the actual voting machines?
Hold on, I need to look at my worksheet. Somebody switched off the thing. You're talking about computer services? That's actually,
Yeah, the
ballots being printed and, thumb drives and things being programmed for us. So it's a combination of things.
But it's all based upon election from that company. Right?
That's right, yeah, so, I mean, I now have 2 voting machines, so they each take a thumb drive plus a spare thumb drive, and then we have a ADA compliant machine that we have thumb drives for, and all that's under computer services.
Actually, I have a quick question. Ellen, can you clarify about the number of elections? So you said 2 town meetings, a presidential primary. Is there also?
Presidential primary, yeah, there's also the town election, I'm sorry, I misspoke.
Thank you.
For May of 2024, that would be on this budget.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. And we don't pay for ballots that, the state elections. We only pay for the local ballots.
Any other questions for Ellen? Right, then, good luck with your broom.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you,
Let's
Ellen.
see.
Those who don't know, she's a curler, so
Yeah, tonight's my league night.
in case anybody thought I was making some other kind of reference.
No, I'm not going to do housework right now.
Thinking maybe, you know.
Yeah, well,
it's fine.
That's why you clarified.
that's why I clarified.
Yeah.
Right.
All right. Good night.
Good night.
All right, so I'm just taking a look at everything else that we're doing tonight. So I'll just start going down. It looks like I have everything down on here that's under general government for the most part. And we can just start going through them and I'll tell you what I have so far. I'll go back up to the top. So the moderator is $100. The only change in this particular line is I've moved it into the correct line into wages rather than in general expense. It's more of a change for in the system. Selectmen. So let me just recap from last week. And it's easy to start here. This is what the old budget looked like. These are the old budget lines. These are the old amounts. So you can have verified that the amounts have not changed. And even though they will look different in the new system, the new selectmen department 122 is much larger than this. And we'll go on to that once we're through these, but this is so that you can see any changes in any potential numbers. Okay, that's easier to track this way. So you can see that nothing has changed in the selectmen's budget except for this additional $1,000 for the auditor's contract. This is an estimate that I got from our auditor, Terenzio. It's 3 years. It goes up $500 per year of the contract. Finance committee, there's one change here, which we talked about. This $2,000 I've moved to finance to help support the clerk position that's there. The reserves are the same 45, this 75
for reserve for negotiations is the one we talked about last meeting, which is, in a dream scenario, which is clearly potentially not this budget year because we're already upside down again. We would put this money aside for these potential reorganization reclassifications we're about to do, right? And that's where this money would go for that. We have a couple that we're going to be considering as we're looking at the highway department into public works, or potentially other changes through attrition, or potentially through this DLS study. And so this is where those funds would go. For those who don't know, who are new, this is where we typically keep funding for contracts that they're about to be up. So, but we have one more year left on all of our union contracts. It'll be next fiscal year.
So Kim, just you upside down. How are we upside down? Because the last time.
Well, because we got the debt service numbers in from the school, which are now in the budget, and we also are now budgeting for overlay, which wasn't in there before. And then we have numbers coming in all the time. And so now we are 210, which is about what I expected, upside down, with everything in, including department requests and estimates for the school at that 50-50 number.
I know my thought was that some of the school debt had falling off in the current year.
Right. It's
But it
next.
doesn't fall off until
Right.
next year.
Mhm.
So this budget has this budget has the last year of that debt
Yeah,
in it.
it does. And I
And it
mean,
wasn't supposed to.
yeah. And so
My understanding was it wasn't supposed to.
right. This is typically where we start our year from, which is why it was so unusual last week. But this, some of the nuances with moving to the new system. So without getting too far into it, but something like overlay, you don't actually account for anywhere on the expenditure side. You just don't plan to spend it. You leave the space available for potential. And so that's some of the things we had to figure out how to do within the new system, which is basically leave those gaps so that things like that could occur. And we used to do special articles too at the end and sort of include them as part of our budget. We had to do that as well.
So I guess my point would be the overlay and then the debt service are two things that were not present on the last copy that are present on this copy.
Yes.
So I would note what changes then.
Yeah.
Because, from a versioning standpoint, or even a,
I'm saving a version in a folder
yeah,
every meeting that we have. So after last meeting, there's a saved version in there. That's a PDF file of the budget that's in the system, exactly with the requests that are in it. This one also gets saved at that. So we will have a timeline to track changes.
Okay.
After this point, we're going to get, so the things that I'm still waiting on are very minor. Like there are very few outstanding things left on the town side besides knowing what the school's request is. Even something like health insurance. I got a rate at MMA last weekend, which is still an estimate. The average cost is going to be somewhere between 5 and 8% on renewal. I had budgeted 10, right? So I've adjusted ours down to 6. It might come in at 5.5. It might come in at 7, but we're way closer to the number now than we were before, right? And those are the big variables on our side, right? Everything else is a request. So
Now, there are three things that between talking with the new superintendent and going to MMA last week that I heard that are issues. And it's not really this part of the budget, but while we're talking about it, it used to be that Norfolk Aggie, the Norfolk Agricultural School would get their bill, or they would send their bill to the Mendon Upton superintendent, and that would be absorbed within his budget. Now it's not, it's separate, it comes to the town. So now we've got that separate, just like Valley Tech is separate, right?
So maybe I should start at the end and then go in the detail, because maybe let's start there and come back. So let's start here from where we were last week, okay? Or 2 weeks ago. So right now we're anticipating about $23 million, 23.2 in revenues. And our expenses at this point as budgeted are about 23.4. Okay, that's a budget increase of about $900,000. I've separated out the things that we would consider the drivers, right? The things that are either contractually obligated or costs that are really not flexible, right? These would be cuts to an existing budget, and tried to identify them. So for the general government side, we're going to go through each one, but you can see that there's about, $50,000 worth of drivers. Public safety, you've got $25,000 worth. Public works, you've got another 60. And then this school, as a reminder, is an estimate. We have budgeted $150,000 for Norfolk Aggie separately. And then this number, this 188, represents the 50-50 number, even though we don't use it anymore, which is right here. The 50-50 number is 338. I took MERSDA's number from last year, subtracted the $150,000 for Norfolk Aggie, and added this number in. That's where their 188 comes from. That's what's in the budget right now. Then you can see in human services, there's a trash contract, and you're going to go through each one of these individually with the departments as they're in here. But just to get a better sense of overall of what we're talking about, big picture for this budget, the majority of the increases on the town side for this budget are from retirement and benefits, and then contractual salary increases. Those are our two. This number is double what it would normally be because it's representing basically 2 years worth of an increase. So it looks like a huge impact for this year.
Why is it 2 years worth of why is it represented that way?
I'm glad you asked. So on this timeline, on this sheet here that says rate increase information, and I went over this last time, but I'll do it again because it's good for people to see, right? From a perspective. So when the budget was passed in FY22, right, in July, it was accurate, right? These were the rates. May 10th of 2022, which is still FY22, but after our town meeting has already approved a budget for the next fiscal year, the Board of Selectmen approved an additional amount, which now essentially voids, invalidates the ones that we just passed that in May, right? So we did do transfers this past STM to get caught up on the amounts, to get the correct amounts in the salary lines in order to pay the employees. But this is the first budget being printed since all of those transactions occurred. And these are the total increases. So you can see them. So you can see that everyone basically received a comparable amount over time, but those were the amounts given during that time period.
But I mean, we gave them a bump outside of the normal contractual agreement. Right?
Yes,
Last
some,
spring,
yes.
we paid them an additional or whatever that percentage is on top of what we agreed to contractually.
Yes.
Because I want to simplify it, and that's fine. It is what it is, and we've done it. And then we moved in this last STM, we moved the money around to make sure everything was settled, right? So the 188 on the previous sheet would look more like 94,000 per the contract, but we did an additional 94,000
Right.
last spring.
Right. So right on this one for the new position allocations, and we'll get into that too. If we were adding 2% without talking about overtime or fire or any of those additional things, like 2% on our entirety of our salaries in any typical year would be about 80 grand.
Yeah.
Okay. And that's before you take into all the other things. So that's the salary piece, is simplified as it can get. But if anyone's had any individual questions, who has access to this sheet, as a reminder, there is an actual chart that details exactly how much each person is getting by position, hours per week, percentage increase, weeks in the year. There is a leap day next year, so it's 52.28, which actually, it seems ridiculous, but it does add to the cost of the increase. And then any particular stipends that we are aware of, and then the totals for the year, so that everyone can see exactly what everyone is getting and that they're all basically comparable. They're all getting the same amount of an increase. Okay, so back to this. So basically we have about $700,000 worth of drivers, and we've got about $143,000 worth of requests at this point, right? Which is really just 3 requests, department requests.
Can I just back you up to that, the 188 for the school?
Mhm.
That 180, that makes, I look at that and I said, that looks like it's the 50/50, right? But then you said something about the
Sure.
Norfolk Addy 150 adding something in somewhere. I don't, you
Right
lost me.
here. Okay. So,
So I see it on the other spreadsheet as a separate line item.
yep. So right here, and this for the schools, if you, right on their budget line, wherever that is, right here. So for Mendon Upton, so their previous year's budget is here. So I have done, I've taken their previous year budget, I have subtracted the Norfolk Aggie line, which is 150, and then I have added the 50/50 number from the other page. That is
Right, so
188.
the 50/50 number should be right there above your cursor, right? Right there.
Yes, this is after you take, right. And so
After what?
after the Norfolk Aggie 150 is removed,
From their budget.
right?
What does that have to do with the 50/50? I don't understand that.
So in theory, if we
Right.
were giving the 50/50 number
Right.
to MRSTA,
Mhm.
and Norfolk Aggie was part of their budget, but they're not going to be, so I've removed a portion that's Norfolk Aggie, and I've still given them the 50/50 number.
Then
It just
the
doesn't
total
look
of
like
it-
338 because they've lost the 150 for Norfolk Aggie.
well, the 50/50 number is actually 338.
Correct. So when, if you take out the.
Not
portion-
half of 338.
No, it's not half of 238. The number is actually 667 or 6 something, right? So that is the amount. That's the 50/50.
So you took the 150 out of the 338.
Correct, because if we're still giving them the 50%, but removing the Norfolk Aggie part. Now, I
I thought,
I thought you thought that was the total.
I thought that was the total, and I think that's what you're saying, the same thing.
Yeah.
Right, so, I mean, I don't know at this point how much Norfolk Aggie is and how much of a swing that is on their budget. I don't know if that's the amount that we actually are all in consensus about giving, but as a starting point,
Yeah.
that's what's in there for their
I
budget.
mean, we narrow in on it, so you need something to start with. It's fine.
And the two things that were announced at MMA that the new governor announced, which I think could have a significant impact is, knowing that this new billionaire's tax passed and it was supposed to be used for education. Yeah, but she did say that they were committed to fully funding regional transportation, which is a huge, if they do it, for regional schools. It's huge if they do it. And just for the edification of anybody that isn't aware of this, the legislature passed a law years ago that said that this legislature would, the state would reimburse cities and towns and regional school districts for regional transportations at 100% of the cost. And then they never do.
If
Well,
it was in the budget.
yeah, well, that's right. It's subject to funding, right? That's subject to funding, but they've never done it. Now, what she's claiming is that this time they're really going to do it because they have the funds to do it. The second issue was that she also said they're committed to fully reimbursing school systems for the cost of charter schools. I know this is slowing down your,
No, it's fine. I'm
But-
warming up my hands.
but
Freezing.
and again, what that number is, I don't know. But the issue is that money is taken away to go to charter schools and supposedly it's going to all be given back in now. I think those two issues could have a significant impact on our local budget if it happens.
Nick has his hand up.
Go ahead, Nick.
Hi, I just had a question for Kim on the healthcare cost drivers. Are you going to provide more detail on that?
Yes, we actually haven't covered health insurance budget yet, but I can just tell you conceptually, right now in our number, so the renewal rate is going to be somewhere between, like I said, I would say, I'm hoping 5.5% to 7%, right, which is pretty narrow. And right now, our health insurance number does include those additional position requests that have benefits with them. So the number is pretty close to finalized. The only variable is whether or not positions get funded or not, and if their percentage moves half a point or not.
So Kim, this will be my annual conversation that I bring up every year around healthcare costs and negotiations of contracts to bring it better in line with what's going on in the private sector around consumer-driven healthcare plans. Are we currently still paying the deductible for employees?
All right, let's just do health insurance since we're here. Yes, so we are currently still doing paying the full deductible. So I would love to pull up the sheet, but I don't know if I closed all the things that need to be closed yet. So, so we pay 75-25 the town, and we pay for the deductibles. The reason we switched to paying the deductibles either $1,000 or $2,000 is because it significantly dropped the percentage increase that we would have over time if we basically just self-funded our own reserve, which we do. One of the things we can look at the future is whether or not we want to continue to still fund that at 100%, which is about $82,000 right now, and whether or not we want to sort of risk it and, save a little less. We've been running about 65% of it, I can say, over time. I will also say, and we can go into this again. It's very generous, absolutely. We definitely need to look at how we continue to provide those benefits beyond active employment, for sure. But one of the things that we did do in one of our last contract negotiations rounds is provide this health insurance opt-out, which had been talked about for a number of years, which it cost the town about $30,000 a year for the opt-outs, or it is currently, but it's saving us anywhere between $180,000 to $360,000 a year based upon the coverage level in which an employee takes. We have 12 people taking it. So those are the types of things that we are doing. We can talk way more into detail about this at another time.
Are we contractually obligated to pay the deductible for the employees?
Yes.
And when does that contract come up?
Next year, all the contracts will come up.
And are we committed as a town to really look at this? Because we've talked about this for a number of years, and really trying to look at how we can take a more of a look at our healthcare costs, and maybe as a study that we do, looking at what other towns are now offering to make sure that we're in line with both other towns and what's going on in the private sector.
We do on so every 2 years or so, in addition to working with a private health insurance agent broker outside of Maya. So Maya is the group that we're in that handles most of the municipalities. That streamlines for most towns how, we're in a pool, but we use an independent agent, and we also do look at where we are in terms of percentages that we give, right? This was a huge conversation about 4 or 5 years ago when the state has created that GIC program, when a lot of towns were opting into that, which is basically defaulting to a state program. So we do look at it. Like I said, the deductibles cost the town about $82,000 a year if fully funded. So there's probably room in there. And should be looked at like anything else we do around health insurance or benefits that we provide, for sure. Certainly percentages. One of the things that is a real substantial driver, and I'd like to pull it up, but I can't, is that, one of the main swings that we see in costs from year to year is the type of coverage that employees choose. So whether they're on an HMO or a PPO, substantially cost the town much different depending on what they choose. And for a couple of years, we modified the plan. We brought in the HMO in order to, now we have an all New England plan so that it could, we could get people to sort of drop the PPO. And the last couple of years, we've had people go back the other way. The difference to the town is almost $20,000 per year per person who chooses that PPO. And so those are some of the things we have to talk about. And then if you consider, we also continue to offer those benefits to employees who are no longer working here. I mean, without really getting into it, we have 5 former employees that are still on the PPO. So if you, plus now paying the person who's in the role. So that's the sort of thing that really needs to be looked at because, and those are policies that we need to create internally and adopt and then execute in order to control some of
And when
that.
you say no longer here, they are retirees or their spouses.
Correct, right.
And what is the premium cost per employee per pay? What's the average premium cost?
I really want to bring up the spreadsheet, but so,
Stop sharing it for a minute.
okay. Give me 2 seconds. I just want to be,
Close it and look at it and read.
I just want to be cautious, just in case.
Yeah.
Stop
Well,
sharing.
Provide.
Stop sharing.
Hold on, I'm trying to get to it. Where is it?
Should be a little square with an X
I
in
gotta
it.
pull it up first.
There you
Okay, great. Hold on. Here. All right, let me just, it has names on it, so
Yeah.
I won't open it up, but you can still hear me,
If you
correct?
close it, they'll all X out though. If you close this.
No,
you
I
get it
know,
too
but they're
small.
over here too.
Oh, they're still.
There's, so we, like I said, we offer a couple of different plans. The projected cost for a family plan for a PPO next year is $42,000, right? So if you're talking about a 75-25 split on that, we're going to pay $31,000 of that and the employee is going to pay 10, right? Or the HMO in comparison, the annual cost is $30,000 and the town pays 22 and the employee pays 7. So like if you multiply that by a certain number of persons, that's a substantial cost to the town. The numbers on the opt-out, by the way, since it's open now, at $2,500 is the minimum that we're saving in a year is $75,000 and the maximum we're saving when people opt out is $348,000. So those are the types of things that we look for when we are trying to find creative ways to do this. One of the things we've talked about, and I think it's not specific around health insurance per se, is this continuous coverage for retirees, and we can talk about that later. The cost of continuing to cover at 75% for those early retirees rather than 50% is between $60,000 and $70,000 per year. So those are the types of things that we definitely should be looking at.
Yeah, thanks, Kim. And I would encourage, as we look at this next year, that we really take a hard look at what the town is offering and making sure that it's aligned with what's going on in the marketplace. And not that we don't want to offer benefits to our employees, we definitely do. We just want to make sure that it's aligned with what else is going on. And, as most employers have moved to consumer-driven health care plans to both control costs on the employee side and the employer side, I think it's something that the town should be looking at.
All right, let me go back. Nothing else on health before I close this out.
Kim, have we heard on our BVT enrollment yet?
I haven't heard anything yet.
Just heard Upton went up. So
Good, potentially. Okay, sharing again, hold on. All right. Perfect. Getting the hang of it. Okay. Let's go back up to where we were, general government. Okay, so we did finance committee. The assessor was already in, you already heard her talk. So this collector treasurer is obviously now finance department in our new budget. The only particular changes in here are around salaries and wages. This line here around wages looks like it's a substantial increase. What this actually is the clerk that we actually just rehired tonight. The last fiscal year and the year before, we had moved to the town hall budget because we were deeming it more of a municipal floating clerk. So all I've done to be clearer on the accounting of where they're going, is move it back solely into this department. So this increase is related to that position moving back in. The office hasn't been fully staffed completely in the last couple of years, but if you look at the previous numbers, you can see that we're still running pretty much on average for what the cost is in that department, despite the different types of staffing that we've had. So, and we can go into, I have a full, actually, since I'm here, let's see, right here. So just not completely updated for FY24, but I get a lot of questions about when we made the switch to treasurer collector or finance department or town accountant or salaries, and sort of the comparisons between the two. And just so everyone knows, we do pay careful attention to when we make a change like that, where the sort of the cost benefit starts to catch up with itself. And, you know, we are about to renew again on accounting. We have a proposal that's in the next line. It's going to be $70,000 for FY22, but we're still, even at $70,000 for accounting, we're still lower on accounting side than we were in FY14. And then on the treasurer side, when we added the finance director, we moved to a finance department, we are still running, you know, the cost of both within the original cost for when we did both departments. So I'll update this when we'd want to go into a little bit further around staffing, and because I know we're going to be talking about that when the DLS comes in. So I think we're going to spend a little more time here, sort of about where we're going with this. So we don't have to get too far into it today, but it just, people do ask a lot about, well, how do you save money? That's one of the ways. Town council expenses, I've left flat for now. We've been running actually pretty good the last couple of years. Clerk we just covered, elections we just covered. Conservation, this one is based upon the current wage rate of the current employee that's in there at this time. As you know, we are currently looking for another conservation agent. It is posted right now. We're optimistic that we will be able to hire someone. If not, we are going to revisit this position in its entirety, potentially by June or July.
Right.
The planning board, this one is a little bit trickier because we've had some grants and some changes over the couple of years, so we could just take a look at it. Plus, we have this new housing CMRPC grant situation. So this one, as most of you know, we are in a multi-year agreement for shared planning positions with the towns of Millville and Uxbridge. The first year of that agreement was covered entirely by the grant. The second year, we've transferred money. The second year of the agreement, or this current part in the new modern 18-month agreement that we're in, covers a senior planner and a junior planner that all three towns now share with shared responsibilities, and then our portion for those within them. So this position covers, this 61 actually covers, it's actually 56, and then there's another 5 in there for hearings because this is the contractual line and that's normally what's there. This 56 actually covers both positions, plus the money from the zoning, the ZEO position is still budgeted in the zoning line in this sheet, which is also for that because the junior planner is also covering the zoning enforcement position. At the end of this contract, the plan is for the senior planner to drop off and for the junior planner to stay on. And so we should see a reduction in these costs in FY25. This Central Mass Regional Planning is usually just the dues that we pay to the CMRPC to be in there. I budgeted $1,800 for that. There's a new housing contract for affordable housing. That's the first year is covered. That was just entered into. The amount, the estimate is about $7,000, $7,400. I've included the 20 here because the management of the housing will be within the planning department.
So is this is the piece that Ann has been coordinating, is
Yes.
that correct?
Yes.
So this should be Why would we be budgeting if that's coming from CPC?
Great question. So one of the issues that we're trying to rectify in the new financial system is actually having accountability for all the different types of spending that we have, no matter
Regardless
what
of source.
fund it comes from, right? So on the revenue side of this,
And the first year should be free.
the first, right, so that's half of this year and half of next year.
They're not going to bring it on until July, probably.
Well, okay, I'm just going with the numbers that Connor gave me. So, but right now I've budgeted just the 20, the straight up 20. On the revenue side, for the, if you see on the revenue page, on the bottom now, we're doing offsets, all the different transfers that we do so that we can correctly allocate for the actual expenditures related to the things. I will clarify, because we've been having some sort of accounting technicality going back and forth. We have a lot of accounts like this, that we do things like this, but we don't actually see a budget somewhere that shows the expenditure. So I'm trying to rectify that situation, which is, we do have different funding types, so we get different grants, and rather than just saying this is coming from here and that was there and whatever, now we can say this is this line says this, and this goes here, right? Whether that actually is what occurs in the accounting system, that's different. But so whether which charge goes where, that's for the accountants to determine where that goes best. But as from a budgeting purpose, so that we're as transparent as possible, this is how we've.
I think the
proposed it.
budgeting's fine. I would just tag that 20 because we should not have a charge in next fiscal year.
Then we won't need it.
Right.
So like, we're not assuming that we are continuing on in the same capacity that we are right now, the cost would be the same. There's nothing additional that money's being allocated for. Like, there's nothing else planned for any of that money. So if it doesn't end up being 20 and it only ends up being 6, then it's only going to be 6. There's no other cost associated with it. Put the notes right there on the side in case anybody needs to see them. Okay, so ZBA, like I said, these 3 hours that were for the ZBA admin, I've added to the ZEO position, which is in building. So that has been transferred down. And then previous ZBA admin has recommended that we increase money for hearings, and that's actually true across most of these departments. We need more money for hearings. And so that's the request that's there. Land use is the same. Town reports is the same. Town hall, this is the jumbled department that will no longer exist after this budget cycle. The changes here are, like we talked about, contractual increases around wages. Just so everyone is clear, there are the previous, this is where this one sort of comes into. Previously, there were about $400,000 worth of salaries in this 199 department. They covered basically anything that was administrative that you could think of or otherwise fell under this 199. Moving forward in the new budget, they're still allocated, but they're just correctly allocated to the departments in which they work. So you'll see in the new system, you'll see those numbers in those departments with the positions. So, but for budgeting purposes, so that, being transparent from the previous year, this is the amount of increase for those positions. There's mine, here's the rest. This is a request that I have around building maintenance. This varies year to year depending on what's available. We will have a new 192 public buildings and facilities budget. So previous boards, whenever there was available, much like roads or whatever we were doing, we're trying to build up money towards maintenance. It's a goal. We'll get there someday. So that's a request for now. There, custodial can come down. The only other real potential increase or change that I see related to expenses in any of these lines are around our contractual IT accounts, which is now management informations and systems. These are the current numbers for FY23 and what we have for contracts. The major change between
in 23 and 24 over previous years is this addition of 365, which was a new expense when we added all this technology, just as a reminder. The CARES Act paid for most of the upgrade related to everything that's related to technology, but we do now have to pay for the ongoing costs related to those upgrades, which is what we are utilizing right now in order to do this meeting. The cost for that is about 40 grand a year. Right now, I'm anticipating just basic 3% renewals on these just to be safe until I hear otherwise from any of the vendors. So right now, I'm projecting about 140, plus or minus. The actuals from previous years are here. You can see where we jumped over to our new system and the growth there related to it.
Just a question, when you hear from vendors, you're assuming 3%. Isn't the contract set? So wouldn't we have to go out to bid to hear a new number?
Some of these some of these are not contracts. Some of these are just straight billing, right?
Mhm.
So they're annual billing.
But we must have gone into a contractual relationship in order to get a bill.
Yeah.
Right?
Go ahead, Lonnie, you had a.
Or purchased a software, right, and signed a contract, right?
Right, so what's that, how does that process work?
Well, like explain Office 365,
Yeah.
Lonnie.
Yeah,
if you-
that won't go up. If anything, we might fall off a couple of some licensing that is, because the way Office 365 works, it's an annual, so you do it on an annual, and it's actually, when you have, especially in environments like this, where you have pretty much a static number, right? Because then it doesn't fluctuate that much, especially on the downslide.
So do we have a site license versus a seat license, something like that?
No, Office 365 is just per user.
Okay, so it's a seat license.
Yeah. And they're all different levels of licensing, right? So you can have just a mailbox, you can have mailbox with SharePoint, you can have a mailbox with, just a mailbox. The next one up gives you SharePoint, OneDrive,
Yeah.
web-based Office. The next one up gives you all that, but installable Office. Then there's all different, there's so many you can buy, right? Yeah, I think that we're using Visio at one time, so there was Visio or not projects. I want to.
I just say, what are
Anyway.
we using Visio for?
It was Microsoft.
Yeah.
So those are, but we do them with an annual commitment
Mhm.
because they're cheaper.
Yeah.
So, and you don't see a fluctuation down in municipality, generally pretty static with the amount of licenses. However, I think there's a few, so now we're in our first year of that. They just pushed the annual.
Yep.
This year, we're coming up on our first audit. So we can drop off anything that's not licensed
Mhm.
coming up. So we may see a reduction. There's no, and we haven't seen, in an order, we kept our original pricing.
Mhm.
They increased the pricing if you went month to month. So by taking that year commitment,
Right.
we're staying there. We don't anticipate an increase from Microsoft at this point.
So, but what's the action of an annual commitment is what I want to understand, because if it's an annual commitment, then we're committing to someone to pay some set amount of money, right?
It's just an annual commitment on the license itself. So each license, so for instance.
So we can adjust our commitment. All right, well, I'll park it, just,
I can go over if you want, I can go over in real detail offline. If it's
good, yeah, to me, it's more about I've been on this whole building maintenance and computer expenses on the other line items. I'm just kind of want to understand better, how does the procurement process go? How is it working now in terms of contractual engagement with vendors, right? And how often are we renewing and going to bid and things like that? That's sort of what I'm kind of just curious about. I could talk to you about the technology stuff. That'd be great, but it's more about the process for contracts. I want to understand better.
Right, so I would say that 90% of what's on there for IT are software contracts.
Yeah.
Right, they're programs that we've purchased and then pay an annual renewal. The only contracts in there really that are large enough that we would even potentially talk about, around WorldBand or even around the Viewpoint, which is Acela, in like the levels on which we would, either expand and add service levels.
Yep.
Or, basically change the functionality of what we're doing.
I think the auditing piece, though, that you mentioned, what are we using versus what we're not using, should be like a due diligence. See if there's a way we can bring down costs, because there are certain things that we never use. That'd be
And
interesting to look
that's
at.
an annual, once a year.
Yep, and we do it. We
Right.
work with
And
them
we
When does that happen? What,
right now. It's
Right.
happening in March.
okay.
So you're monitoring our use from a,
So, right, so we, as an employee gets hired so replacements are obviously a net zero, right?
Yeah.
So we should be at a static level. However, I believe there's a small amount of extra licenses that that are in there right now that aren't being used.
Right.
So we just have to, they're covered through, you have to keep them through March. Once that drops, once we hit March, we drop those off. So, but we do that as an employee comes in or out. So say if there's a static loss to an employee leaves, but nobody replaces, we unlicense that.
Yeah.
That account, it goes into a shared mailbox,
Yeah.
which are free. That way the shared mailbox holds the mail and we don't lose it from that employee. Then, if somebody needs access to that
Yeah.
mailbox, we just.
To me, it's less about the person, the resource that's getting licensed. It's more the level of license. I think you'd be want to tell it, like, if we never, say we had Vizio.
Yeah.
And that's, there's a
Nobody's using
pricing,
it.
dump it, get a lower.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. There's maybe one or two, I can pull it up if you'd like. We're in good shape in most places across the board. There was one town that wasn't telling us when people were leaving,
Yeah.
so we were just at it.
And
And we finally talked to them about it. I'm like, do you have this many employees?
Even though I'm asking about it, I just want to plug it from my last go around on the board versus this go around. I'm all for the technology. So this is all,
No,
it's all good stuff.
It's, and with, so, just as far as contractual on like the Microsoft side, there's really no contract. There's nobody, it's just a license that you're
Right.
buying. So it's not like you can go to Microsoft and be like, well, let me go to Microsoft.2 and they have better pricing. It's just Microsoft.
But we did actually just have a conversation, 2 days ago about seeing if there, so one of the great things that's about technology in this age that we're living in now, right? When we started doing this, 9 years ago, the financial software package alone was $285,000 to switch to, and we were able to just do it for like 40 or 80 the last 2 years. Their Viewpoint is a good software program that a lot of municipalities use, but they were also just recently acquired by Acela, which is a huge conglomerate. And so they've become the standard, but that doesn't mean they're the most modern and the most progressive. And I shouldn't say, we're small enough that we actually could pivot to things that are more modern and maybe save us money and take a look at them as they become available, because we aren't sort of stuck in one spot.
By that new company.
Right. So right. So when we were at MMA last weekend, I was talking to a couple of software providers, particularly around Oracle, because there's a thing that I want to do. And then Lonnie had just sent me another one the other day. There are other smaller vendors that are starting to pop up, right? And then the other thing around software, particularly around Viewpoint, that we've talked a little bit about before, the FinCom has talked about before, is whether or not we charge for a service for online use. Right? Some towns do, some towns don't. So that's the sort of thing that we sort of take a look at around that to help. Basically, we're paying the entirety of the cost right now, but we could subsidize that by potentially charging a fee related to it, like we do for online billing for the finance department. So there are some things that could be looked at. Okay, so that is it on general government. So I'm going to zip on down past public safety and get to building. So you'll see this in the new budget on the next page as our new inspectional services department. One of the benefits of inspectional services, in addition to streamlining what we're trying to do over there, is that all these smaller inspector accounts will now be consolidated into basically one contractual account. And so there'll be less sort of small transfers at the end of the year. But only changes in here, like I put here in this note, which is I've added the ZBA 3 hours here. And we are paying the previous ZEO funding for that position, which was 18 hours, is now subsidizing the cost of the junior planner position, because she is taking on those roles and working under John as well as under Jack for plan. So she's doing both. So that's here. And so I put this, without that, the increase would be 2.4, which would be right in line with everybody else. What else is on here? Everything else is flat. pretty good. We already talked about, this is Dave, we talked about this. The tree warden will come in and talk about his own budget. We talked about the school, but they'll also come in and talk about theirs. I mean, we're making good progress, but
To a question on the school, Kim,
Yeah.
have you shared these numbers with Jay at all? 'Cause
no.
Is it time that we did that? Because the window for the school budget certification and our own certification for town meeting, like 45 days, you know, the whole thing, it's tight, given what the state's doing. So, you know, I hear Jay, I was at the subcommittee meeting last night. I hear 50-50, but those are just words. I'm not sure 50-50 is the numbers you're using. You know what I mean? So you got two different potential interpretations. He's trying to zero in on minimum local contribution. They don't have that yet. But then he's like, well, that could change everything, Mike. And I'm like, yeah, but at some point you're gonna start putting these numbers down to understand as you solidify them, what way do they need to go? So I don't know if it's time now to start to kind of give them a number.
So I'll just say, I thought the approach that we were taking is that we were going to wait for them to come to us with a budget that they had put together based upon need. That was the conversation that I had with Maureen. Because I mean, my position is I want to know what it is that they want, that they need.
Well, they got their expenditures down. They just don't have the revenue
Right.
side down because of the state. So understanding the increase of their expenses, they could share with you at any time.
Right. I mean, it's ultimately up to you, but the last couple of years, the thought was we're giving them a number to back into. Of course, it's helpful for them to know what we're really talking about realistically, right? This isn't a game of checkers. I mean, you know, but
Can I ask was it Monday or yesterday you had the budget subcommittee meeting?
Yesterday was budget subcommittee.
Okay. So they're giving you their expenses. They're giving you that information.
I've seen it.
Yeah.
I mean, I just had a conversation actually with Brendan today. I'm anticipating, so just in general concept about these budgets, their Worcester County retirement numbers are going to be very similar to our numbers, but a little bit larger, right? And our Worcester County retirement number increase was $125,000. Right now, looking at this number after not knowing Norfolk Ag, their increase is 188,000.
Well,
That's,
one of the-
I mean, retirement alone is probably going to
What-
eat that.
But
So
again,
my guess is there's more.
But I met with the superintendent on Monday because I had promised to have coffee with him. And one of the things about that, they've had a great many changes in staffing where a lot of teachers have left. They've hired some not, entry level teachers, but their retirement level is entry level. So what the point I'm trying to make is there's an awful lot of variables and moving parts that are still here yet.
Right.
That in just like we don't know, they don't know.
Yeah, I guess I'm not sure why we wouldn't share. I mean, I look at the
Well, we're
schools,
doing
not
it-
just another department, right?
Yeah, well, we're doing it.
And I
like-
just think there's a small window between the 15th and the 20th. They're scheduled to meet with us on March 15th. They're gonna go to a budget meeting, public hearing on the 20th.
Yeah.
So I would
Well,
hope that
it's-
we're gonna just have the,
Well, again, it's all being shared here. It's available there. I mean, as far as,
So the two things that, for instance, I was talking to Adam about this the other night. He brought it up when I met him to give him the laptop. And I'm sure Adam could speak better to this on me, but the state has mandated a 14% increase in our special education outsourcing. That's a huge number, right? So there's going to be that. And we can share, they can share the expenses with us now. We can share, and I'm not saying not to do it. We can share any numbers we want. But until we know what the revenue numbers are, and until we know what they need from us, our number is arbitrary. It's not going to make a difference on whether their budget changes or anything. They're still going to, if their budget's off by 10 grand, okay, maybe we can see that. But their ask to us is, you said you saw the numbers. What are their expense numbers? And what's the budget look like right now for the Mendon side from what you saw at the subcommittee meeting? Is it $130,000 over last year's budget?
they can't do the allocation with minimum local contribution. Understanding what that impacts.
the short answer is you don't know.
No, I saw a total number. I think I don't know offhand, but yeah, they had total numbers. I saw what their priorities were and what the cost of those assumed costs were. I guess part of me is I'm just not sure. More communication's better than less, I think,
Well-
in 30 days out. That's sort of my thinking.
I get that. The problem is We can tell them that it's the number that's here. It's not, it's right.
Yeah, the
Well,
general-
I guess all I'm saying is Jay uses the term 50/50.
Hmm.
Let's just make sure 50/50 is the same 50/50.
And all I can say is when I met with the.
Well, that's sort of a clarification we should probably
Right.
clarify,
And-
right? And I think actually he kind of is aware of the Norfolk thing.
No,
But he
he's
might have
definitely,
applied it
he's
to-
definitely aware of it.
Right.
And when I spoke with the superintendent on Monday, you know, I shared with her specifically, my concern is that what needs to happen is all of the regional school districts across the state need to go to the state level and the federal level to look for more revenue outside. And I'll share this again. I think I said this at the last meeting when I talked with Zach Blake, who works for Division of Local Services that has, and this week he told me the report is with his boss. He did, so we're.
Said that 2 weeks.
Yeah, well, he said 2 weeks ago he was sending it to them. Now he told me it's actually with him. But the point was that he said, we were on a collision course. He says, none of the regional school districts are properly funded and it's a crisis. So all I'm getting at is that there is communication and what everybody knows is all the numbers are up in the air. And these are predictable, more predictable than everything to do with the school, just what you talked about between, you know, regional transportation and what the minimum local contribution is going to be and what the special education is going to be. There's a lot of numbers and nobody knows yet. And it's all up in the air because we have a new governor. And then on top of all of that, you still don't know what the legislature is going to do because those two sides have to get together and agree. But all of that being said, I agree with the communication and I think that's what is going on, and all of these documents and all of this information is available to Jay to look at anytime he wants.
And I mean,
It's access to the folder.
All he's gonna do is ask for it.
so they, everyone was sent an email, but I mean, just again, for clarification purposes, the last couple of years, we basically said no more 50/50, right? But even in terms of what we're talking about right now, even if, I mean, their fear, of course, is that somehow we're gonna not fund to a certain level, but right now that funding amount is $188,000. We know that's not gonna be enough. So even if we zeroed it out
I just
again.
want to jump in real quick. I don't think they have a fear about funding. They have a fear about the unknown.
Yeah, well,
The more we can clarify, and I think, Lonnie, you made this point last time.
Mhm.
You said, they just need to tell us priorities. We got to figure out how to finance it. You know what I mean? It's our job to finance their budget. They need to identify what their expenses are, what their ask is. That's sort of summing it up. You know what I mean?
well.
We can either choose
have
to
to-
do an override to fund it. Yeah.
Right.
And I
I
said
agree.
that to Jay. I said, in general, it's just like, get it down. And it's sort of now he goes, well, how do we start to, because we want to minimize impact to the town where we can, but we're flying blind. I'm like, fair enough. I mean, if you're saying I can kind of have conversations with these numbers, or if Mike or Nick or somebody from the FinCom attends the subcommittee meetings and we can start sharing it, it just, believe me, it's just going to go to a point where people will either say, oh yeah, that's what I expected, or say, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? Because they don't want to impact the town. They don't want, you know what I mean?
Shareable as shareable can be.
Correct. And the superintendent, what the superintendent and I discussed was that the origin of that 50/50 number is when you look at our budget and you look at how much of the budget
Right.
is the town side and how much is the schools,
Mhm.
it's about 50/50. If somebody says, well, where did that come from? Well, because half is about the town and half is about what the schools cost. But then I went into, I told her everything that we've just talked about and said, but because of the, you know, we give what we can with the 50s because of, you know, there's money that comes from federal, there's money that comes from state minimum. Well, that's all in flux, but we're really not in flux. You know, we don't have a percentage, we have a number, you know, and we've shared what those numbers are. We know what the tax base is. We've talked about this. And even I've talked to Jay about it, not all that long ago. So it's what you said is, I think there is an expectation, and everybody's, the unknown part isn't here. The unknown part is on Beacon Hill.
Well, without us telling them this is where we're at and this is
Yeah.
our thinking, there's an unknown as to what we're thinking. And that to me is what we can clarify.
I don't think this, well, okay, I think, well, I can tell you that I did clarify it the other day.
Mhm.
I've clarified it with Jay. I've clarified it with the superintendent. And I'm doing it again now right here, and it's something we've been talking about for a year. And that's the best I can do, but I don't disagree with you that, again, have at it. This document is a public document, you know?
So in terms of school funding, just to help with all of this, the DLS has a really great website out now with a lot of financial resources. So I've already started to add some context to requests. So in this same Finance Committee folder, if you go into it, you can see town department spending comparisons by population in Worcester County, right? So I was able to go onto the DLS website, download the data, right? Compile it into a spreadsheet and take a look, because this is another question that we get. So like, for instance, this is a spreadsheet that is all towns in Massachusetts between 5,500 and 7,500. And then the average spend per department for these towns and where Mendon is in comparison to the average, period.
This is terrific.
Thank you. And so this is, 55. So, and we could do any parameters. So you can see we are high in a couple of categories, right? Public safety and education. Like this is over the average, right? And then in Worcester County, because that's the very next question, like, here's all of the communities in Worcester County. Here's all of the spending by departments. And then same down here, plus or minus, where is Mendon related to these categories and where we might be high. So, we're high in police, a little bit in fire, we're over by 4.5 in education, and then we're slightly high in.
These are the new dashboards they put out there.
Yeah, so this is just some of the data. Yeah, so this is just the tip of the iceberg and the types of things that we can start just getting easy access to help clarify around this, because, I think everyone is in support of the schools. That's no question, right? The question is about making sure that all of these departments are funded at the right levels as compared to other municipalities, right? And so that comes up a lot too. So these sorts of things can help us sort of get a better handle on that. So hopefully this helps the conversation move forward.
Can you just repeat where that file is?
Yeah, so okay, so go back into the Finance Committee. And you see, so there's a lot of new folders in here because Lonnie just merged over all of the data from Jean Daverin's laptop. So I'm sorting through that. I'm trying to clean it up for you guys. But I've tried to put the stuff that's like really of interest that you might want to look at just right here as soon as you go in. So like town departments by comparison, this one is the one I just did. I did this one a couple years ago, town department by department. I had done this one, but this is more up to date down here. And then like this one, I'll put some more in here over time, but like we can start looking at data around property tax statistics and like where all of the things where the money comes from that supports what we're doing. And we're going to have to talk more about this around when we're looking at water and sewer.
Kim, Mr. Chair, Kim, I think this is terrific.
Thank you.
The data compilation and the like, and I did have a chance to look at it. I just think one of the things we just have to bear in mind is a data point like that, is a starting point. I think you made that observation because there's going to be variances with respect to what you're talking about. Public safety could very well be land area you got to cover, right? So the idea is that you have a gigantic, footprint of a town. You've got obviously more territory to cover.
Whether it's a regional school district.
Whether it's a regional school district is another variable. We're dealing with some towns that quite frankly have, per capita income, which is wildly in excess of what Mendon is in some of those towns. So I think we just need to take a, take it with a grain of salt, right? So
Everything-
that's a data point, but obviously subject to cross-examination.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
right.
Well, I think that just based upon that sheet though, if we're that much higher on education, if the salaries are, if the income is higher and those aren't regional school districts, then that's even more of a problem. Because as a regional school district, we should be paying less. And if we have a lower income, we should be paying less. And if we're higher than that, then again, I'm just saying, But that.
Well, I would say the DLS site that they just put out there, I would say if you haven't seen it, you should look at it because there's all kinds, all the per capita and income per capita. They've done a really nice job of representing the
Right.
financials.
And when I get interested in a thing, if I think of a question that I'm trying to answer it, like this one, like get ahead of, I'll save it right in there, like this. Because you can download the data, but you saw how that comes up on those sheets with the DLS. It's not as easy to read as like just putting it in a spreadsheet. So I'll be doing more of it as we get further in the process.
Thank you.
So I only have a couple left, and we might as well just get to benefits since we're already here. So debt service too, we had a question about debt service. It's not on the schedule for tonight, but I did somewhere. Let's see, I did it so long ago, I can't remember. Here we go, debt service. So debt service is obviously the amount that we pay, right, related to our obligations for borrowing that we've done. The numbers are set in advance. It's just a schedule that we pay. The most common question that I get around this is, when are we going to have any room? So here it is. So right now, like we just talked about, the school isn't even on here because they're on a separate schedule, but this is the majority of our debt schedule. And so we'll have our first drop off in FY30 based upon our payment schedules. And then we'll start to have some capacity, right, 29 into 30, some real capacity related to borrowing. So.
This is good to know especially with the talk about the senior center.
Well, when I look at this is what I see. I see FY29 as the architectural design study. You basically do a band upon anticipation note in the first year in order to borrow the money in order to basically secure the contractor and everything else. And then you do the full borrowing the next year. That's what I see when I look at that. But I mean, we got to get there.
But this doesn't include any debt we have associated with the school district, is what you're saying, right?
It doesn't, they drop off next year. So they'll be, those two payments will be gone.
But they've got future, they got some.
They've got plans.
Right. So we don't have, there isn't anything on here. This is existing, right? So that's debt service. In case anyone had questions about that, is also saved in the folder under budget support documents, if you want to take a peek at that. We've talked, these state assessment and charges are actually chargebacks. We don't know the full amount until the end of the year. That's why the numbers vary, but we've never actually budgeted in advance for them. So I put some money in this year to be there. We usually just cover it with the transfer at the end of the year.
Which one is this?
These state assessments and charges, they're so small that normally we just transfer them at year end, but I'm trying to get every single thing that we expend
Why not?
in a line somewhere so that
It's a good time to do it.
it's right. We talked about Worcester County retirement. This is an actual number. We're going to have to take a look at. It's not uncommon right now for all of the rates are super high, but this is a killer. But I mean, pretty much, and I think we talked about this before, if you can think that we've had a number of retirements in the last 5 or 6 years, and those retirements were long-term employees that were. Yeah, so it's impactful. Workers' comp is variable too, obviously, depends year to year. Just for clarification, police and fire, public safety are in a different category entirely. They're down here under other employee benefits, fire and police insurance. They're not the same. So this number runs high when we have employees that are out on Cub. Same with unemployment, who knows, right? It's been high the last couple of years because of the pandemic and post-pandemic, but it varies year to year. Certainly depends on the amount of turnover we have and what positions they potentially are in. So that's a variable. Health insurance, as I said, right now, this number
is at 5.5% or 6% plus the additional positions. Plus, we have some vacancies in departments that we don't, so like if the police they're having turnover and a person didn't have insurance last year and we don't know if the new person does, we anticipate that. So we have placeholders for them. So the number can fluctuate and does over the year depending on who is on staff. Same thing, a few years ago, we picked up short-term and long-term disability. We're able to negotiate down sort of benefit costs carry over, right, for employees with sick time. So this basically cut everyone down from, I think, 190 to 160, something, savings in days that we would have potentially been liable for. It's basically for our OPEB savings. And then, like I said, this police insurance is for when they are out on disability, and then liability insurance is obviously our property insurance. So that is all of those. In the new budget, so this is the yellow. In the new budget, this is what it looks like in department-wise, since we've covered most now. You'll see moderator, right? See, select board is now much bigger, right? Finance committee is smaller, but they have a separate, because your reserve is in a separate line of its own, okay? It now belongs in its own individual department line as a reserve. Accountant, auditor, same thing. These are two contracts. They go in this line. One used to be in the selectmen's budget, one used to be in the finance, now they're in their own department line. Assessor is the same, we've talked about that. Finance department, now consolidation, right, of the other departments. All the salaries are rolled up into one line, and then professional service contracts or anything else for this. They're one-to-one. Legal is the same, right? We now have a human resources department, which has salaries in there, and then a budget for recruitment, retention, and training, which is things that we purchase in order for host training here, essentially. We now have management information systems technology. This is all of our systems related to things we talked about, right? These are all the ones that were in 199, right? Maintenance contracts, new equipment, telephone. There's no additional, these are the same numbers, just in new lines. Town clerk, she spoke tonight, you heard her. Elections is the same, conservation is the same. Planning, you can see these changes right here that we talked about. Yep. Here's the $20,000 for the grant, right? That's where it lives now in that line, which is for specifically Central Mass Regional Planning, right? Related, it's there. Zoning, same, land use committee, and now we have a new 192, which is public buildings and property maintenance, which is great. There's all of the consolidated utilities are in here, which used to be in 199. The maintenance budgets are here, equipment budgets are here. Town reports still, this one will be gone. This now lives in the selectmen's budget. Here's 199 gone. Bye. Right, catch all. And then police, right, so that's, you can see right next to it. So like, you know, it looked like this, had a lot of miscellaneous lines before for individual things, now all consolidated down into clean lines. Same with fire.
Now, can we still click and open these up, or is that no longer?
Can you still click and open them up? No, these will be the lines.
Okay.
Well, no,
Well, we've been talking
well,
about
these
this.
will roll up to salaries, expenditures, and
right.
whatever, but this is what's in there now, right? And in the new system, when you have a report, if it's linked, you can click on the line yourself and it will pull it up and show you the detail of what's in that line. So you can see which bills have been charged there. Fire consolidated. So here's inspectional services like we talked about. Right now it's one department, all consolidated into one. These will all be gone. Inspectors, emergency management is the same. Animal control is the same. Now this is forestry / tree warden. That's the UMass standards name. Dispatch, which will come back next year, full force. Then we now have Mendon Upton Regional School. We have Blackstone Valley, and then we have Norfolk Aggie, all with their own. Public Works is now And I think Alan's coming in next week, but I could take you through his budget since,
No, we will let him do it next week.
okay, well, I talked to him today about this. His budget is now consolidated into this 420 instead of 421, 422. It's all into Public Works and Facilities, which is, these are the UMass standards. So he now has this Public Works Facilities, no road machinery, right? No highway, all falls in one department. And then snow and ice is the same. Street lighting, we're going to talk about next time because that bill is astronomical. It's $48,000 last year and running outrageously high this year. So
How'd that happen?
Yeah, I'm not even
What?
sure. What I'm told is that some of the streetlights were turned off a while ago, and I asked
So I
the,
got a database, full
Oh, good.
clickable database since last week. So that I can pull through and sort of sort out what is costing so
'Cause,
much
well, the
and
chief-
where.
the
Like,
chief of
it's
police
a
is-
killer.
chief of police is working on a project for us where they're finding out all the streetlights in town, which ones are on and which ones are off, which ones are fixed, which ones are being paid for, because the thing about streetlights, there is no meter.
Mm.
That's not the way they work. It's based on the calendar year and how much sunlight there is and how much night light there is. So those numbers, it's not tied to actual use. It's tied to, how much daylight there is and what type of light. Because, there are some LED ones and some of the sodium, I forget the different names. But I'm not entirely sure I don't know how accurate it is. And I think it's something we really need to take a look at.
Well, I know for a fact that we have not been budgeting or adjusting accordingly. Going back a couple of years worth of data, it looks like as soon as we hit the limit, we either were charging it all to 199 and never charging it to streetlights, or they were commingled, particularly around when we switched to solar and we're using the crediting system. I think because the billing comes in and then the credits are sort of all, they didn't get separated out again. So at the end of last fiscal year, I ended up having to transfer like $40,000 for streetlights, and it was outrageous. So I'm in the mix on that right now, which is I have all of the billing data. I have now this spreadsheet with the individual polls. So I'm going to dig into that more, but
The new categories you're showing us tie to the DLS dashboards that were just released, correct?
exactly. It's,
So what is unreserved, undesignated fund balance, UUFB?
well, it would be free cash.
Is that what that is?
Yeah, I mean, if it's undesignated,
At first I thought it was stabilization, but that's separate.
well, which line?
I'm looking at a chart.
Yeah,
I'll
so-
take it offline.
So it would be.
Reach out to Blake.
It
He's the
shouldn't
guy
be-
who did the webinar on
It
this.
shouldn't be stabilization. In theory, it's any additional amount that's left over that's a reserve that's not allocated towards something specific. That's what that would be, like from a previous budget life, something bigger. So like cash that's floating around or, somewhere. So then, same thing, snow and ice, streetlights, waste collection and disposal. We talked about this last time. The Board of Health is going to come in and talk about their trash contracts, but it's now broken up into a couple of different categories. One is waste collection and disposal, right? And one is Board of Health. I've already talked to Jack about really taking a closer look at how they, Board of Health, what that looks like for the next 10 years related to trash and waste. And we really should take a better look at that and making sure that we aren't subsidizing in any way. I'm not certain that every year that we've had some issues in the past.
Yep.
So that's another area that I really want to get into, right? It's supposed to be net even, right? And just make sure. And then water, same thing. This is the same. Water distribution, cemetery is the same. Board of Health, you can see it looks smaller, but it's essentially the same. The numbers, the Council on Aging, right? Veteran Services, Library, Recreation and Parks are now split into two. One is recreation and the rest is parks, which is actually the maintenance of the actual parks. One is the operation of the actual activities, and I've moved special events into there, which was this small line that we had. That's been $400 for the last bunch of years, who knows? And then Historic Commission is the same, see? And then we'll have a section here that's, you know, debt, and then state assessment, retirement, and then I'm rolling up the long and short-term disability, and then the fire and police other insurance under employee insurance as one number. But that's it. I mean, so if you look now in the folder that says, let's see, budgets, FY24, I'm gonna go with right here as a guess. You can see I have this one saved to 123. This is the actual report from Springbrook. You can see why we're doing this elaborate spreadsheet again, because it does not have previous year data in here yet, right, for your comparisons. But you can see it's all in here, matches these lines. So you can scroll to the bottom and it matches the bottom on the other one. And then just for of interest to anyone, we also, today I just added the revenue expense report for up to February. That is in this line right
You're
here.
saying the year-to-date numbers?
It's right. So, well, it's like Lonnie has given me many layers now that I have to dig through. Right here, monthly rev expense reports, FY23, it's right in here and it's labeled, right, 2-1, and this is your expenditures through today. And you'll have to rotate it. Yeah.
That's all, just lay, just lay,
If you're,
everybody lay down.
Not good today.
if you're, if you're very interested in, you know, so there's a lot of things in there. Like I said, I'll be going through the folders and cleaning it up, but I'm trying to label it. And the stuff that is like most relevant, I'm trying to put right up front for you to go to for now. And then we can sort most of it later so that it's easier. So I think that's good on the budget for today.
All right.
Questions, you know.
Does anybody on the FinCom have any questions?
Good, thank you.
All right.
Don't see any hands.
Nope.
Can we close out the FinCom meeting real quick?
Yes, go right ahead.
Make a motion to close the FinCom meeting?
I'll second it.
All those in favor? Krager, aye.
Aye. Jack?
Aye.
Sandra, aye.
FinCom meeting's officially closed. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
All right, we have actually two other pieces of business. One of them is to approve the minutes from previous meetings. I'm looking for that.
Stop sharing.
I move to approve the meeting minutes of 10/26, 11/9, 11/14, and 11/16 of 2022.
And
Second.
I want to thank Laura for getting those put together and ahead of time so everybody could review them ahead of time. Motion been made and second. All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, thank you. I just, maybe, Elena, you can just in the information you have, but for those who aren't aware, I think it was it right around Christmas Day that Peggy Veal passed away.
Yes.
Peggy was very involved in town politics and, you know, the right to farm community. She was a longtime resident.
She volunteered on the Solar Ice program also.
Yeah. I didn't even know.
Yeah, I know. It was, well, you know what, Lonnie, nobody knew.
It was very fast.
Very fast, and you know, there's going to be a service for her in
April. Yeah.
Oh,
They want to make sure that family can travel in, so.
so I just wanted to make everybody aware of it. She's a great
You know,
person.
roughly in April, so we can.
I want to say the 23rd.
Just
It's a
make sure
weekend,
that
it's a
will.
weekend, so yeah.
Yeah, we will.
Whatever
We will.
everybody wants to do.
All right. Well, if there's nothing else, next meeting is in 2 weeks, which is the 15th.
Yep.
Right. And I know at that, and actually at that meeting, not to steal their thunder, but for those of you that don't know, our previous senator, Lou Bertinazi, has, with his campaign funds, has run this competition for all of the towns in his old district. And apparently, over the last 2 years, Mendon's turnout has been the best.
Yeah, we've done well every year.
Right, so
We
there's,
always at least finish in the place, if not first.
Right. But there's gonna be a banner that's we can put across front of town hall but there'll be an official announcement, and he's gonna come to our meeting in 2 weeks, so. But if, I have a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All right, thank you very much, everybody. Good night.